I think that the things that were what has created what I like to call, what actually I don't like to call it because I don't think it's all the way accurate, but the pathology within the Black community are things that were created by the people who now are scared of it.
But they created it.
Yeah, but they created it. And they're less like, the unfortunate thing is that's a truth I think that if you're, again, look at it from a critical thinking standpoint, most people will agree with. So I think it's a logical truth. The problem is, so then the people, when you say you created it and you say the you, those people who are the you who created it are less likely to then say, okay, what can I do to uncreate it? And that's because, you know, one, we separated with time. Like I didn't, you know, my grandfather wasn't I'm not a slave owner, blah, blah, blah. But also there's no interest. There's no interest. And I don't think that that's evil. There's no interest in most white people with most white people in dismantling the poverty and the discrimination. And there's no interest in that. Mostly because they don't understand the history of how it all started in the first place and how it was put in place in the first place. That's one thing. So it's easy to disconnect from something that you just don't even know about, which circles back to a problem that you already touched on. We don't know each other. And that's the largest problem, because that's all. Now it's always been the case, right? Most Black people, if you're in the South, you ain't never met a white person unless it's the person on the plantation that's whooping you. And most white people in the country didn't know Black people because there weren't that many on the East Coast, in the North. And so you only heard about slavery. You might have seen some slaves, but you thought everybody was one anyway. And so the reality was people didn't know each other. And that's exacerbated by when the people who are facing this ignorance of each other really don't know themselves either. Right. And so, so for Black people, we don't know our history other than slavery, right? I don't know where I came from in Africa. I don't know what tribe. I don't know what they like to eat. I don't know what their tribal history was. Where did they actually come from? Where did they migrate from? So I don't even know myself. Don't know white people except they're all racist and they all want me to be a slave. And that thinking doesn't change until situations are created where now I'm encountering others, right? And that's when we start running into the realities of what I thought I knew about white people or what I thought I knew about Black people was not necessarily accurate. And now I got to use some critical thinking, which I've already outlined is a problem because we didn't learn how to use that in the first place. So we're kind of behind in that.
And insecurities will create the inability to use critical thinking.
And because we're human, so we're going to be insecure, right?
Especially if you've been through a lot of trauma in your life, insecurities is like the number one thing you have to overcome.
Yeah,
or one of the things.
Yeah, no, it's number one because the insecurity was probably what kept you safe while you were going through the trauma, or mitigated the trauma that you were going through. So you learned that that's my shield, but that shield. Yeah, it will deflect attacks, but it's a barrier between you and someone else. And especially in situations where it behooves you to learn, from those interactions. So, that's a lot of what we see now. And even like with, comment section activism, like I'm typing on my computer, but I don't see you. Right? I don't know you. I can just say what I want to say. You can say what you want to say. And we got to go the extra mile to create something that says, wait a minute, I don't even know what this person looks like. And I'm talking shit about them and they don't know what I look like. And what can we do to strip those barriers away?
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, when it comes to any race of people, it seems like the ones who like have businesses, who are more educated, and like the nerdy kids. The nerdy kids are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met a nerdy kid who, I don't care what they are, white kid, black kid, Asian kid. I've never met a nerdy kid who's racist. Like super nerdy.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
That's probably
Nick Fuentes is pretty nerdy.
Yeah.
But I mean, my point is because they're educated.
Yeah. For the most part, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I've always said if you do not educate somebody, for every dollar you take out of education, you better put 2 into building a prison.
Yeah.
Because when you don't educate people, that's where those people.
That's you've steered them, to that, yeah. Yeah, we, our education, but even from a historical standpoint, which is again I think people need to learn about our educational system became problematic based on the country's reaction to civil rights gains by black people, which and that in itself was again
say that again. Civil rights what?
Civil rights gains by black people.
Gains.
Yeah, gains.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because once you started seeing desegregation, which is, in many cases was kind of really put together pretty shitty, but the reaction from people when you started seeing like little black kids are now going to be bused and they're going to go to this school, and the reaction was people came out and protested and threw rocks at these kids, right? Spit on. I mean, these are 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they're being spit on.
This is what they're learning the world is about.
How dare they go to our school?
Yeah.
Well, that backlash is really ultimately the consequence of that type of backlash. First of all, it took what happened was people in power, which are mostly white people, said, I'm just not going to put my kids in those schools. And because they were public schools. So now we're going to take our kids out of public schools. And then, well, I got my kid at home now. I don't know how to teach him. So let's create another school system. And so the private school system comes out of that. Well, private school system benefits from money that comes straight out of people's pockets, not government money. But that out-of-pocket money means control. And
Was the private school sector, is that when it really grew? Did it grow during that time?
Yeah, after Brown versus Board, which stripped away laws of segregation, and Brown versus Board was a school lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So because the original movement of desegregation was busing, it was the transportation systems, but Brown versus Board became a school issue. Once Brown versus Board was ruled on, now schools are forced to desegregate.
Right.
And that's where you started seeing like Arkansas, you started seeing, because you get the Arkansas 9, those were the first kids who integrated the schools in Arkansas. You started seeing that. But the reaction to that was, because most schools, they were all mostly public. Schools for kids were public schools. Our public schools, our school system was public. Governments put money into these schools. But once the backlash came and people started taking their kids out of schools, the question was, well, what do we do? What are we going to do with our kids now?
Yeah.
Well, we got to create a new system
that has no black people in it.
Right.
I mean,
right. I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, we got to create our own system now. We'll pump money into it. Hell, our money means control, and we just get more money. And now you have a disparate system. The private system, whether it's white or not, now the private system has more money, more resources.
Sure.
The public systems that are having money taken out because of pressure.
Now they're worse.
Worse. Books old, classrooms old, teachers not as certified.
Yeah, good teachers are going over there making a better paycheck.
Exactly.
In the private, did you find anything?
Yeah. So this says, this article says there was a couple booms in U.S. history. One in the mid-19th century, and that was based on faith-based preparatory institutions.
Yeah.
and then another significant boom in the 50s to 70s, and they title them segregation academies.
Segregation academies.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never heard that before.
Yeah,
That's
I'm glad.
crazy.
I'm glad you that brought up the point about how faith-based schools were, because that was from a historical sense, the biggest driver of education was the church.
Yeah.
Right, and even not just for primary schools for kids, but because those primary schools matriculated into prep schools, and then the prep schools literally preparing people for college, and of course we have our early college institutions were all pretty much church-based,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there was one wish I had to go back in the past. I wish that the churches could have been more influential in that boom, in terms of dealing with, hey, we can't allow this process to happen. We have to keep our public schools funded. We have to support desegregation of the schools. We can't allow these private schools to go over here and then, pull resources and exacerbate this. I wish the churches had done a better job of seeing, and maybe they didn't see it.
Yeah.
But
but also, people start making money. More schools open.
Yeah. Yeah.
More money goes in those schools.
Yeah, because
People
these are for-profit schools now,
right?
Because they can't rely on government money like they used to.
This episode is brought to you by the Josh Henry Workshop, where craftsmanship meets purpose. Whether you're in the kitchen slicing up dinner, out in the woods, or just need a reliable everyday carry, the Josh Henry Workshop has you covered. Every knife is handmade and hand-forged in the good old USA in North Carolina by a veteran-owned small business that puts heart, heritage, and pride into every blade. Michael, what do you think about the Josh Henry Workshop knives?
Jeremiah, I love the quality of the Josh Henry Workshop knives. These are not mass-produced tools. They are custom pieces built to last, with real attention to detail. So if you're looking for a knife that works as hard as you do, check out the Josh Henry Workshop. You'll find your new favorite blade, and you'll be supporting a small business that truly cares about the craft. Visit the Josh Henry Workshop on either Instagram or Facebook at Josh Henry Workshop to learn more or to place a custom order today.
Right. So it's for profit. And of course, if you have something that's for profit, you got to drive money to it, which means you got to create more businesses and draw in more businesses and draw in people who are wealthy and things like that.
So what are you seeing like in 2026? I know it's a cliche, right? But present day, what are you seeing the struggles as being, based upon not just the history, but what's actually still in place? Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I mentioned the whole thing that's going down with Epstein, because that kind of plays into this. These people that control, we may think, oh, this person's just controlling this government or this congressman or this or that, but there's more stuff coming out. Epstein's talking about, and there's a group of people that he's working with that are talking about other races in this paperwork that's coming out and suppressing these other races. Now, if these people have billions and hundreds of billions of dollars and governments and that countries that have trillions of dollars or whatever they have, these are the ones in power. It's actually not really necessarily the money. The money comes with the power naturally. It's the power. Because I was telling somebody earlier, I was talking to them about this. If a billionaire came right now into Lakewood, into Denver or into any city or into Vegas, that dude's going to have a wild time.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of money, a lot of people around him, they're whoever's going to benefit from that, the economy is going to benefit from that person coming to town. But that person cannot, do what this group of people did with power to people and get away with it. If that guy gets out of line, billionaire or not, if he doesn't have any power, he just has money, he can end up in jail by the time the day's over. It's the power that makes the difference, because when you control the militaries, when you control the legal system, when you control the governments, when you control just various things, there's no consequences. Because these people that you control or are in bed with you, they're the ones that control whether you get arrested or not, or get are held accountable. So, I mean, I just wonder, it's like, on one hand, I'm asking you these questions, but on the other hand, it's like, we're still seeing it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And this Epstein thing is crazy. Like, people like me, I had a rough life. I wasn't privileged. I've worked hard to get what I have now. So I've been focused on that,
Right.
and it's easy for a lot of people to say, well, it's 2026. Everybody has an opportunity.
Right.
But then you see things that come out like this and you're like, wait a minute, man, this thing is
Not
still,
necessarily true. Yeah.
it's still structured
Yeah.
in a way that people with power are
Keep that power and you don't get nothing. Yeah.
So
It doesn't matter what race you are or what background you come from. Because the money, the only color that matters is green. But I think, if your question is like, what's the biggest, like, what are really people struggling with now? I think most people who are seeing this play out, like Epstein and even how the government operates and dealing with shutdowns and horrible healthcare. I think the biggest struggle is they're being confronted with the reality that they were being manipulated this whole time. And that now that's not a struggle, that's just a revelation, which might be, it's hard to confront the idea that you've been dumb, right? Because you don't want to feel stupid. So I think as Americans, most of us are just feeling stupid right now because now we're like, oh shit.
I think we're all feeling that way.
Right.
Or anybody who has any sense.
Right. So the struggle now is, what do I do with that? What do I do with how do I push aside the shame and the embarrassment of realizing I've been played? And how do I now make my life meaningful? Right? Because once you've been manipulated, you're like, damn, all my life was about being a pawn. Now, what do I do now that I realize, okay, I'm done with being a pawn, but what does that mean for me?
What's my next step?
Yeah. And especially when you realize this game was rigged and what you thought was success.
Progress.
Yeah. And also what you thought should be your goals, none of that means anything. So now what do I do? And then how do I avoid, I think another struggle is, how do I avoid how we deal with shame? And how we deal with shame as human beings is we cover it up. And we usually cover it up with the stuff that leads to violence. And how do I avoid that? Because that's where you see this undertow, this talk of revolution and race wars and uprisings, right? And most people are looking at that like, I don't want to participate in that shit. Revolution sounds great.
I've heard that stuff too, and I've told everybody. I said, man, you realize, like, if that ever happened, I'm losing family members.
Yeah.
If not my own life.
We all know that. Yeah.
You're losing family members.
Absolutely.
If not your own life.
Yeah. I don't want to be, look, I'm all about confronting social injustice, all of that, and dealing with, the shit that's really messing us up. I'm all about that. I don't want to have conflicts where I'm having violent fights with people over these things, because I know that I'm going to lose people that I love who have a different skin tone than me, who live in a different neighborhood, who have a different accent, but I still care about them, because I don't want to be put in situations where I'm either going to lose them or we're all going to lose fighting that. And I think most people understand that, right? So when you see the riots, when you see these clashes, most people are like, I get it, understand it, I see how they're justified in that. But if you ask me, do I want to be involved in that? Do I want to engage in that? Fuck no. And so people are struggling with, can I avoid even having to be put in that position? And what do I do to do that? Because I think that if I do the things that answer that, what's next now that I realize I'm not a pawn, how then can I live a meaningful life? I think most people will understand that if I do that, the result is we won't have these violent clashes, because as I said, the violence is really reaction to the shame when you wake up. Because I think it's a very human, psychologically, it's what we do. We cover up these really bad feelings, and what we cover them up with is usually the shit that makes us puff our chest out. And when we puff our chest out, now we're bumping heads with people who are puffing their chest out too. And so I think that that's where the struggle is. I don't want to be like Trump. I don't need to have his money. I don't need to have Epstein's money. I don't need to have P. Diddy's money. Clearly, that shit is disastrous. So now, I can resist, because now I realize I've been manipulated to thinking that's the way we should all live.
Yeah, that's the dream. That's the goal.
Yeah. I think people thought that that's what the quote unquote American dream was.
Yeah.
Be like Trump. And if you think about how we thought about Trump before he was president, even black people love this dude.
Oh yeah, how many rap songs have Trump?
Exactly, and that's why, because he was. That's the American dream.
Yep.
And I can come up from poverty and be a billionaire and kick it with him, right?
Yep.
Now you're realizing that was all bullshit. So now what? Now it's, man, you know what? I really should buy a house. I really should raise my kid. Maybe move to maybe go get involved in the schools now. Show up for PTA meetings where all the kids are acting wild and shit. Maybe my presence there will calm things down. Maybe I go volunteer and be a coach, football coach, and now I got kids. Like, now people are starting to think like, damn, maybe this is the process that our lives should be. I'm not gonna die a millionaire, but if I have a house, right, I have something, some generational that I can give to my kids, and they can build on that later. Let's look at school. Let's look at now, maybe, we start going to trade school. Maybe we start, going to college. Now we're starting to, our process about what is successful is now it's been challenged. Now we've admit that it was fucked up. Now we got to create other things. It's a struggle because most of us have been conditioned to think this is just the one way. And now we have all of these options in front of us, which can be frustrating, maybe even intimidating. But I think when we talk about what are we struggling with now, I think that's where we're at. So.
And now to add to that, in such a weird time, it's now AI is coming into play. Talking about it's going to take everybody's jobs.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, we're trying to figure things out still.
Right.
I don't know if we're ready for this.
We're not. And that's huge. It's huge because, it's funny because there's AI in the sense of the challenge of AI with our jobs. Also the challenge with AI in terms of information. Like, am I looking at what I'm looking at? Is that real?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so easy now to create it. I can just type some shit into a prompt and then
how are these people in power going to manipulate AI to continue the game?
They're going to
continue the game.
Yeah.
Right. Show. Oh, well, did you see what's going on over there?
Yeah.
And this whole thing. Here, scoot up. You're back into the curtains again.
Yeah.
No,
I was relaxing. That's why, man.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. That's a huge challenge.
Because now it becomes a master script.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
yeah,
now they believe what they watch on all these platforms. So now we need to not present it as a government.
Yeah.
There's other things. We just create videos and create things and make them think that you could be living. What if you could be living your life for like 5 years in total fake stuff? You're just watching, everything you're watching is fake and you don't know it.
Yeah, it's like a Ready Player One situation, man. You just tap into the virtual world and that actually becomes your reality. But I think, my hope for it, if I'm looking at it from an optimistic standpoint, the thing that drives AI is still humanity, right? Like AI, at least yet, doesn't program itself. So there's always going to be the permanent need for human intervention in terms of the use of AI. And that also means that that's going to create its limitations, which I think is good. Because our fear about AI is that it's limitless and to the point where it'll evolve into, Skynet, and then it's Terminator shit. But I think because of the human factor involved, it's already got a built-in limitation. The one thing, and so we won't go away from the things that demand our human presence, which does, which covers everything from manufacturing to our politics, to just how we live. I think that's still going to continue, to be important. And so we can take advantage of that now as we start to see AI develop. We can say, look, we can let it develop in ways that benefit us, but we're also going to hold on to the things that really don't make AI such a threat. Because I can't imagine, like, AI is not going to plant seeds in the ground. Maybe a robot could, but you still gotta, someone's still gotta make the robots.
I think they're already planting seeds in the ground with equipment.
Maybe.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's this machine that goes and it plants the seeds.
But somebody's got to fix the machine when it breaks.
For now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And those realities, I think, still allow us to, like, okay, breathe a little bit easier.
Yeah, like I'm in the construction industry and I'm in management. Okay. So a lot of our stuff that has to do with submittals and procurement and a lot of things like that can easily be done by AI. Yeah, even like estimating projects, AI can just take the take the drawings and just estimate them. So there's fields right there where you just don't need those people anymore. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. I mean, you see it all the time with Amazon. Amazon gets rid of people as much
all
as
the
possible.
time,
as much as possible.
Yeah.
They upgrade their technologies. They're like, yeah, we can get rid of 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw an article the other day though that IBM is upping their like entry level positions by like threefold, because they've realized that at least the current limitations of AI. They cut people because they're like, oh, it can do everything.
Right.
Reality, right now, it can't do it. So they have to hire a bunch of people back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's gonna I think there's the built-in human backlash to AI. I don't know how deliberate the backlash is, but I just think there's going to be a realization that we've thrown a lot of our money into this development of technology. But as much as we develop technology, we'll never go away from needing the person. Now, how that looks like, I don't know. We actually may use AI to create the solution, but there's still going to be the need for that person. And it may, the consequence may be inadvertently that it changes how important money is, right? Because the one thing that will never change about money is that it will never be more important than food and water, right? And so the speculation in terms of how valuable money is, I think, is going to change because of technology. And so you can, while AI may create less opportunity for people, I think on the back end it'll create more opportunity. But it will result in, the jobs in technology may not command as high salary. And maybe the farmer will start making more money, as we shift to the importance of, we've been ignoring farmers and and manufacturers and the people that can repair stuff. We've been ignoring them for so long and paying them like shit. Maybe, we can, those things will start changing.
Well, they shipped them all out of the country.
Well, that too.
Yeah. So maybe
we start going to get them. Hey, come back.
Yeah.
Hey, we gotta draw you back.
Or those countries start charging us more money, and then it's like, well, it's the same price to do it here. Why not? Yeah. For sure. I wanted to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
What do you think the cost of speaking up is sometimes for people?
I mean, sometimes it's your life. And we know this looking at people who've been activists and have spoken out, and because of it, they've died.
Sure.
They've been killed.
Yeah.
For me, it personally, obviously it hasn't taken my life, but get close. I know that I was shot because of my refusal to shut up about my experiences. I know that.
Is that why you were shot?
Yeah.
Really?
And that's in a nutshell, and it's a bit more complicated, a bit more of a complicated explanation, but in a nutshell, because
How many times were you shot?
5 times.
5 times.
Yeah. Once through the face. That's my little divot there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the first bullet, and then the rest in my arms and elbow. Shattered my elbow, and through and through my arms. Yeah.
Did you put your arms up?
Yeah, I was fighting because the guy that I was getting out of my car, and it was middle of the night, dark in the parking lot of my apartment building.
Wow.
And I just felt this. I can't explain it, but I knew danger. Like, it was like danger, and I just immediately just started throwing punches, and elbows, and as I was doing that, he shot me. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Which, I think saved me more damage, because getting hit. I mean, the worst bullet was the one that, hit me in the face, because I ended up getting a stroke because of it. But the fighting, I think, helped me. I didn't get, my organs, could have got shot in the stomach, could have got shot
chest.
Yeah.
More in the head.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. It was all arms. All arms and elbows. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What kind of caliber?
40.
Oh, 40.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it stopped on your skull?
It entered right under my cheek, so blew out my face, hit my jaw, deflected, and hit my carotid artery, which almost killed me. But also the reason why I got a stroke, because my body responded, so my blood clotted, and when they put me in the ambulance, one dislodged and went to my brain, so I stroked out because of that.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, 40 is no joke.
No. Weird in that it was a 40, so like it didn't cause the damage that maybe a lesser caliber could have. But at the same time,
I've heard that sometimes.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
When you think, you're like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it was like, I would rather have, it been, Nerf bullets, but.
Or nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean.
How did that change your life? Because, I mean, that's like people that get exposed to almost dying.
Yeah.
And don't die, and then now they're back to live more life.
Yeah.
How does that change your perspective?
That's a really good question. I mean, for me, and because it's a good question, because I can't answer for anybody else. I try to look at people who've gone through it, and I sort of imagine how it's made them change. But I can certainly say it from personal experience. Because that experience was very spiritual for me, and so it had an effect in terms of my religious practice, right? It made me. I always felt like I was adamant about my faith, and especially my faith in the face of challenges. I've always been like, no, like I'm really a Muslim if I can be Muslim when I'm challenged. And I've always held on to that. And this experience was like, yes, you're absolutely right. So then I'm like, okay, good. I became probably more fearless, and I always felt like I was fearless. Like, I'm not scared of anything, because the worst thing I think that can ever happen to a person is death. And I'm like, I was there, been there and done that. So I don't have as much interest in feeling like I have to compromise myself to survive, which then means my propensity to shut up is even less than what led me to being shot. At the same time, it on the other spectrum, I think I have a lot of empathy for people who have had similar experiences, whether it's been shot or physical trauma or just trauma in general, because I can now be like, I know how you feel, and not be lying about that or not be inaccurate about it. And it allows me to be more empathetic and compassionate for people in what they're going through. Because the one thing I do realize is that people have experienced worse than what I have. In general, there are people who've been shot who didn't recover in the way that I've recovered. And so my gratitude for how people are resilient when they do experience trauma it's immense, in terms of my own gratitude for what I've gone through and survived, but also a lot more compassion for people who've experienced that, yeah. So I hope, I hope it translates then to how I am active in the things that I am active in, and also translates to how, another big thing was like my fatherhood, because now, I feel like, I try to answer the question of like, I could have easily died, so why didn't I? And part of the answer was, well, I got to finish raising my kids. I got a 5-year-old. My daughter's birthday. I have an adult daughter. Her birthday's today. She just turned 29, so I'm not done raising her, clearly. At least when she's like, I need money, it's like, okay. But, it's like, okay, I still have my responsibility as a father, and how do I use this experience when I'm raising my kid, who's, he's a boy. So now I'm raising this man who's going to be dealing with all of these situations that we've been talking about, right? And how do I prepare him for the challenges that are going to be in front of him, that are a challenge to him as a person and his personality and his manhood. And so going through this certainly, I think, colored, my approach, to it.
Sounds like it gave you a lot more reflection.
Yeah. It really did. Because my having an adult kid and then a child, I was in this issue, kind of this back and forth of, okay, I think I was successful with my daughter, but man, if I messed up, how do I make sure I don't repeat that with my kid? And anything that I failed with her, how do I make sure that, I don't fail with him? And this experience was like, don't worry so much about that. Just raise your kid, because she's already your success. And I already had that attitude with her anyway. I was just like, I'm just going to raise her as instinctively as possible. And if I make mistakes, as long as she's not dead, I'm okay. Right. And so, and then, so with my son, I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry so much about whether I was successful in the past. I just need to make sure I'm, pouring into him as much as possible. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to the guy who shot you? or the person who
Nothing.
shot you? I don't know who
Nothing.
shot you.
Yeah,
If it was
nothing.
a guy or a girl?
Yeah, it was a guy,
Yeah.
and I know I know who it is, and nothing has happened to him. And it's, it has been a psychological, spiritual struggle for me to not be the reason that something does happen to him.
Yeah, you don't have to elaborate
Yeah.
on that. I don't want to put you in that situation.
But yeah, I mean, the person got away with it, and it made, the incident colored how I deal with the aftermath and surviving it, to be quite honest. But I benefited from it. One is just, the resilience, which, on one hand, it's like, I wish I didn't have to be resilient. I wish I didn't have to survive the things that I've survived in my life. But at the same time, I think it's part of human nature. I think the things about humans that make them so special compared to all the other creation in this world is the resiliency. Because there's no way that if you look at a baby that it should survive, right? It doesn't feed itself. It doesn't pop out knowing how to hunt. It needs another person to even live to the next day. And by design, this thing shouldn't get to where it's building AI, right? And so to get to that point, it entails a resilience that you can't explain. And so there's that I deal with. Okay, it's about resiliency, and even how do I deal with the anger and the frustration of having to even go through it, because I deal with it every day. The stroke paralyzed the nerves in the left side of my body, and so I have no feeling except pins and needles.
Even now?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So has that affected your MMA fighting?
Oh yeah. I don't, well, I'm old, so I don't fight, but I still train.
But you were fighting, I think, or training up until that point.
Yeah, I was training. Yeah, I was training. And so it's weird. It's very strange because, like jiu-jitsu, you need to have a sense of physical touch and awareness of your body. And I don't have full awareness. Hell, I can't even, my left eye is just a blur. I can't really see well out of it. So that's, it's like, okay, if I'm boxing, I'm like, ooh, I gotta really watch, I gotta really watch their right hand. With jiu-jitsu, it's been really strange for me because I just can't feel. I don't have the sensation of touch.
So if somebody's trying to,
yeah,
put their position in a certain place, you're like, oh, okay, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh,
I have no awareness. Yeah.
They're there before you know it.
Exactly. Now I'm just reacting, right? Relying on my training, like, okay. Yeah. So it's been, but that challenge, I just take it as a challenge. Like, okay, I just gotta, just keep rolling, rolling.
Sure.
Yeah. And so and that's life, right? It's like, okay, you gotta adapt and hopefully, be able to cope, and maybe even if you're lucky, overcome. I'm hoping one day the feeling comes back, but there's no guarantee. Doctors are like, it's nerve damage that started with your brain. We don't even know how the brain works. So I'm fortunate that I can move. I can hold things in my hand. I just can't feel that I'm holding it. So I usually have to pay attention because I end up dropping shit. But I'm grateful that I have movement. I still have movement. And so it's the whole gratitude piece of what I'm dealing with.
For sure. So that's, I think, an answer to what's the cost of speaking up.
Yeah.
My other follow-up question to that was, what's the cost of not speaking up?
Yeah. That's even worse. The cost, or no, it's worse, but I think more steep, to be honest. If I look at someone and I say they lost their life, or if I look at myself and say, yeah, I lost, my health. you can pay a steep price, and maybe the steepest. But I don't know that whatever you pay is compared to what you pay when you don't. I rely on religious teachings in this realm where in Islam, faith is defined by how you react to injustice. And the Prophet Muhammad said that when you see it was like it's a mandate for any Muslim when they're confronted with something that is unjust, they have to act. And then it's a question of how and how intense is your activism and what level do you act on? And there's the highest and the lowest. And the Prophet Muhammad said that the lowest is if you don't intend to do something. But the next lowest is your voice. You have to use your voice. You can act physically to stop injustice. You can act with your money, your sweat equity. But at the least, you have to at least say something. And so for me, I'm like, if I don't say anything, am I being true to my faith, which is extremely important to me? And I think that because our faith is also grounded in, you got to do what you say. You can't just talk the talk. You have to walk the walk. And so if I don't say something, am I being true to who I think I am or that I say that I am? And so if you don't say anything, I think that you're paying the ultimate price in that you are being untrue to yourself. And I think that's the worst thing a human being can do. That's the worst thing, is not be true to who you are. You might have to figure out who the hell that is. But that's just a challenge. But when you figure it out, when you can say, this is who I am, if you don't speak up, then are you really being that? And so I think that's really the worst cost is that you just lose who you are if you don't at least say something. And that's, I'm scared to death. If anything, I'm scared to death of being a hypocrite, right? That's probably my biggest fear. That's probably the only thing that really scares me, is that I would end up in some way, shape, or form being something that I'm not, especially because I don't, speak out.
Yeah. Another way that I look at it too is the cost of speaking up could just be you, the person who speaks up.
Exactly. Yeah.
The cost of not speaking up is all of society can suffer because no one's speaking up for injustices in society.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. It just brought to mind kind of that cliched statement about, like, I didn't speak up when they came for my Jewish neighbor or my German neighbor, and they got taken, and then my other neighbor got taken, and then pretty soon it wasn't nobody to speak up when they came for me.
Or your family or your community suffers because no one stands up. Yeah. Sure, the risk is you could get killed, or all the focus is on you. Yeah. But the cost of not speaking up is all of society suffers.
Yeah. Well, and I like, when you're talking about the name of your podcast, and I was thinking about when you're talking about the name of it and what that sort of entails in terms of ideals. And I think that none of us can truly avoid the fact that we are part of something that's larger than us when we talk about, especially in terms of community, right? Like I'm a Muslim, but I'm part of a community that's over 1 billion people. And I've always been impressed by that. I've always tried to hold to that reality, because that means that my faith entails people who are not like me at all, as and there's so much about us yet that is mutual. There are Muslims that when I say assalamu alaikum, and they're from China and their only language is Chinese, but when they hear Assalamu alaikum, they know exactly what I'm saying, and vice versa. There are people that live on the other side of the planet who, when they pray, they face to the same direction that I'm facing with another billion other people. And so that's just one aspect of who I am. That's my faith. But I'm Black. I'm an American, so I am part of a community that's 300 million people who don't think the same way that I do, don't wear the same clothes that I do, don't have the same accent, don't have the same skin color, don't have the same ethnic origins. And then ultimately I'm part of a planet, right? And my membership in all of these communities, I think I realize means that there's some responsibility that I have, maybe a debt. I'm indebted to all of these people, places, ideas. I'm indebted in the way that I interact with them. And I think by realizing what I owe, and there's a lot of things I owe respect. I owe patience. I owe my ear to at least listen to you, right? There's all of these things that I know that I owe. And I think that by realizing it alleviates a lot of the conflicts for me personally. And I feel like then that means that there's a formula for success in that when I start thinking of bigger pictures. And so when I interact with other people, I'm like, okay, I owe you this, but I'm also hoping that you pick up that you owe me. And that maybe when you pick up from that, then you can owe your neighbor, and so on and so on and so on. And that's where when I'm thinking of our world, then it's like it's not the world, because now I got to put myself in it.
It's not my world,
right?
It's our world,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I came up with that. I mean, you said it so beautifully. Everything you were saying describes exactly our approach on this podcast, and that's the way we look at it. It's like being a part of a group. I mean, you're born, you're part of your family,
right?
Fine, okay. Now you're part of your town, fine. And I mean, how many Black people are in America? There's 12 to 13%, so that would be about 40 million.
Yeah.
So you're part of 40 million. Like, you were saying you're a part of 340 million.
Right.
Then you're also part of 1 billion Muslims.
Yeah.
But then you're also a part of over 8 billion people on the planet. And then who knows who else we're a part of in the universe.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the way I think, just because I'm more conservative, more, I lean to the right, although I don't really like the right now in the state that it's in. But, these are all just bullshit, like groups.
Yeah.
Really.
I agree. And that's why I'm like, I don't, if someone asked me my political leanings, I honestly, Jeremiah, I have a hard time answering it because my first answer to myself is I don't really know. And it's because if I say, I worked for Democrats, I was adamant I'm not a Democrat because I understood that also meant that I'm applying myself or aligning myself with something that really meant I'm in opposition to other people that I may actually really like, right? Yeah. And also I saw how politics, just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean that you have your shit together. But also it made me, my experience also made me look at where do these terms come from? What is a Democrat and why? And what is a Republican and why? Mm-hmm. And
sometimes it doesn't make any sense.
Sometimes they're the same thing.
Because we say we're a democratic country.
Right.
So are the Democrats democratic?
Right.
And the Republicans are a republic?
Right.
Like the one you see in Hunger Games?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Who's what?
Right.
And what's the definition and what does it really mean? Because you should all be following the laws.
Right.
The Constitution.
Right.
Rights, the Bill of Rights.
Right.
We should all be following these things.
Right.
So how are we different?
Exactly. Which then I'm so then why am I gonna put this label on myself. I can't really explain it. I can
Yeah.
explain to you my political leanings, but when you ask me, does it fall under this label? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
because if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that people should have economic advantages, if I feel that people should have universal health care, if I feel like that's not a in my opinion, it's not a democratic thing, because I know people who are Republicans that want to have those things. And so it's like, then I'm hesitant to put those labels on it, because then because I understand the labels are inaccurate. I understand that people are using labels, and if you ask them the history of the labels, they don't know, because we didn't pay attention in civics class when this shit started, or history class when we started learning about those things. And two, ultimately, it doesn't really matter, right? I have done really amazing work in this world with people when none of us were worried about what the label was. What we were worried about was, how can we help that person or these people or this community? And for me, that's been more meaningful to me, as opposed to what can you call it.
I think my I shouldn't say I lean right. I would say I'm more conservative, but I would say if you ask me my political views, I would respond on what?
Right.
On
See?
what?
Yeah,
What are we
exactly.
talking
Yeah.
about? Are we talking about what issue?
Right.
You know, because it's like the Republicans, certain groups like to take, these are our issues.
Right.
And then the other ones say, okay, these are ours. It's
Right.
like when you break a pinata at a birthday
Yeah,
party.
they're all running for the candy. Yeah,
all running for the candy.
Yeah.
That's my candy.
Yeah.
That's my candy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but can I have that one? Oh, can I have
Yeah.
that one?
Or do you really remember you're allergic to that one? So give me that, right? Yeah. And you brought up a really good point, because when I hear people say, like, I'm liberal, conservative, right or left, I automatically do end up, this question pops in my mind, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, honestly. But what I do want to know is, what do you think about XYZ? That to me is not left, right, or conservative or Republican. And I feel like because I'm getting back in my critical thinking, because I'm like, okay, you gave me a label, but that doesn't explain anything to me about what I really want to know about what you think or what you're doing. And I think that if people would slow down and do that more, that when we started hearing, oh yeah, I'm a conservative, we wouldn't rush to judgment about what we think a conservative is.
Yeah, it's like Charlie Kirk. A lot of people hated him on the left.
Yeah.
Democrats, they hated this dude. But I was listening to him one time, and he was talking to a transgender that hadn't done a surgery yet. Came to him at one of these college functions and said, hey, approached Charlie Kirk just talking, just like you and me are talking.
Yeah.
Didn't yell, didn't like get defensive. Came to Charlie Kirk and they were talking and having a conversation.
Yeah.
And Charlie Kirk was like, okay.
Yeah.
And Charlie Kirk did a great job of just talking back, because I felt like Charlie Kirk would start to argue with people when they would start to disrespect.
To me, that was his biggest failure, was that when he was prone to arguing.
Yeah.
Because it didn't allow you to, when he did that, he didn't allow himself to create space for people to really listen to what he thought was really important. Because you're not talking about that. You're arguing with somebody.
He did this time.
Okay.
And it was a great conversation. And the transgender and Charlie were talking and just conversing. Yeah. And just, Charlie was asking the transgender questions. The transgender was just responding. The transgender would ask Charlie questions. And Charlie would respond. And they were just communicating. Right. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Here's two different people.
More of this. Yeah.
Yeah. More of this.
Yeah.
There's two different people who are having a genuine conversation.
Yeah.
And I thought Charlie did a great job in that conversation. And I thought that the person who was speaking to him did a great job in that conversation. And it was like, man, that's how we should communicate.
Right. I could only imagine what the comment sections though would have been.
Oh yeah, that's the problem, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. There's no thrill.
Yeah.
There's no thrill in this
Right.
conversation,
Right.
unless you and me are talking shit or
Right.
arguing, and you get up and walk out and you break the microphone and smash
Right.
the camera.
Right.
There's no.
Now we got something.
Now
Yeah.
we got something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's nuts, man. I don't get it. But yeah. What does I had another question for you. What does I don't know if I want to use the word liberation. What does maybe it's justice look like for all people from an activist point of view?
Another good question, bro. I think it depends on what the consequence of the law is, whether the law is being broke or it wasn't being broke or whatever. So I think justice is really a matter of the consequence of the law itself. But I think ultimately,
I mean, in our lives, like justice for everybody.
I think it means the separation. I think it means less fear. I think that because we have these ideals of kind of what justice is, but ultimately that freedom, because you talk about liberation, there is a freedom that is in this ideal of justice, where I feel this freedom to do what I want to do, but I'm not infringing on you and your life and your rights to the same thing, right? If my feeling of wanting to do whatever it is I want to do should not create a situation where I'm impeding you from the same thing, right? Whatever it is, if there's something that you want to do it. Now, if it creates a messed up situation for me, then now we're talking about issues of justice. If my doing what I want to do creates a bad situation for you, now we've got to mitigate that and we've got to fix that. And that's where justice is. Because then once that's established, once it's fixed, then that equilibrium comes back into play. I think that's why they use scales to mean justice, because it really meant equilibrium, that I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing, and neither one of us is exploited or taken advantage of by what we're doing. And hopefully in a more idyllic sense, what I do helps you and what you do helps me. And that's even better. But as long as I don't infringe on you and you don't infringe on me, then I think the result is that it allows us to continue to really be free, right? And then of course the problems of it, where there's injustice and disparity and a need for reform and all that, happen when, as a consequence of what does happen if I do infringe on you. What happens when you do infringe on me? And that's where the questions of, is there real justice, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's just that thing that leads us to allow us to just be free in what we do, as we do it in the same, sort of same space. So,
man,
it's a long ass answer, but
that was not a long answer.
I think you preface it really good with this. I don't think you intended to, but with the idea of liberation.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that, yep. I think that word needs to be in there.
Yeah. That's why I stole it and ran with it.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. If there's one person, even just one person who watches this and gets a better understanding of from someone different than them and how they think.
Yeah.
What would you want that understanding to be like? I mean, like, if somebody was impacted by this and opened their mind a little bit, what would you want them to, how would you want them to carry that on in their life? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Man, it's hard to distill it to this one thing, but I think, as I think about it, man, it's a good question when there's a billion answers that come through my head, and I'm like, okay, pick one.
Sometimes it's hard too because there's so many different types of people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're trying to do math on because to generalize it sometimes.
Yeah.
I
was. And I think that's the problem because I think, but I think, because at first I was thinking about, like, once you have to at least be able to admit that you don't know the other person, right? That because they're a total different person. The ideas that run through their head, you have no idea about their wants, their likes, their dislikes, their desires. You have no idea about. And if you admit that, then you enter in with this humility. And I think that's ultimately the thing that I probably would want to impart to people, that you have to always have this idea of this understanding of humility in dealing with other people. And it's so important because I think it's the one thing that's also the easiest thing to forget. Because I always think about how easy it is for me to prejudge people. And I always feel like a sense of shame in that, because I'm constantly put in situations where I'm confronted with, I prejudged them and I was so wrong. And so I always kick myself. I'm happy that it happens because I feel like that's God always sort of checking me, because I keep doing it. And I'm like, man, I know better. I thought about this person. I thought they were this, or I thought they would do this. And then it's like, how wrong you are. And then I'm like, well, why do I keep doing that shit? Because I know better. And the one thing I always keep coming back to is this humility. The one thing that's going to keep you from prejudging people is if you already approach them with the humility of knowing more than likely who you're looking at is not who they are, right? What you see visually or whatever, that's not who that person really is. And in order for me to be mindful of it, I just got to stay humble about my approach with people. And I wish that people, that's probably the biggest thing, honestly. It's you have to approach people from a standpoint of humility, which is challenging for me. I have to admit, I got an ego for no reason. and I'm always struggling with it. But when I'm mindful of it, then I think when I'm less likely to prejudge somebody, it always creates a situation that is so advantageous for me. It makes me feel stupid that I would even do such a thing. Because you have to be ready to come across people as more global that we're becoming, as more connected as we're becoming. You're going to come across people who are going to surprise you and shock you with what they know and what they can offer to you. And if you are closed off, then you're going to miss out on a lot that you should not miss out on. And I think it just begins with that humility, that you don't know shit about that next person just because you see them. And when I'm mindful of that, I'm cool. When I'm not, I think, something comes out where I'm just like, oh man, I didn't know that about that person. And then I feel stupid. So I think it's just that being mindful of humility when you're dealing with that next person, because you never know who they are.
Yeah, that's a hard one to condense down, but that was a brilliant answer.
Thank you, because I had a billion, because it was a good question, and it just was like you said, the challenge is, because I do have to think of, when I think of people, and especially in groups, or I'm like, man, I know so many different types of people. How do I speak about them in a general sense?
Yeah, I learned
it's hard.
I learned growing up. I've seen a lot of people who stay with people that are just like them. They stay with their own. Yeah, and they're only comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's human nature, though.
Yeah,
I think,
and then I see those people just get hurt by those people. Like those people, you may have a dude who's trying to sleep with your wife, or just checking out your daughter, or like who's stealing from you. But these are the people that are like you. Yeah. These are the people you choose to say, I'm locked in. I don't want to know these different people. But then those different people would never, you don't know. They would never try to disrespect your family, try to steal a penny from you.
Yeah. I've just benefited. When I think about my life, there are just so many times, and especially important times, where I benefited from my connection to somebody that, if someone's looking in on it, they'd be like, I wouldn't expect there to even be such a connection. And oftentimes it was because of my willingness to not be closed off, not prejudge, but also to be able to be like, okay, I am from this group, but let me step out and connect with this person. And then build over whatever our differences are. And I've always benefited from the people that I've done that with, who've always somehow come back around. And when I least expected, or when I most needed, or sometimes just out of nowhere, it's like, it's because, this improbable sort of connection. And that's driven me a lot to then, let me make sure I'm creating those connections, because, and it may be a bit self-serving, but I'm like building up, my portfolio of kaleidoscopes that at some point, in some way, shape, or form, is going to benefit me in some way. Because that's a driving factor for me. And I wouldn't be where I am today, challenges or not, were it not for people opening doors for me. And I'm like, damn, that's not the person that I thought was gonna, would have expected to do that.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have this podcast if I didn't experience so many different people in my life. Yeah, that I enjoyed talking to different people in my life. If I was just stuck in a bubble.
Yeah, and I think they appreciate it though. Like people, I think people really do appreciate, 'cause they notice in ways I didn't think they would. They notice when they see you come out of that bubble, when they see you cross over that line. People actually appreciate that, maybe in ways they can't or don't know how to articulate, but it comes back around, man. I'm adamant about that. That's just in my experience.
Yeah, I love those stories where people cross those lines. Like they have prejudices towards other people, and then you see it all the time in those documentaries where people, they like, well, why do you not like us? And it's like real life documentaries, and then they go hang out with them, and then they invite them to come hang over with them, and then before you know it, that person's hanging there,
damn near their family.
And those people are turning in their stripes for whatever thing they were hanging their hat on, or any prejudices, and they're getting away from that. And they're just, you can just see them glowing as a person. Yeah, see them blossoming.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah, I was interested. I was like, man, like we're all connected now, like you said, on the planet. and we're always traveling, and people are marrying different people. And I was like, man, how long would it take for us to all mix to where we were just like one race?
One race, yeah.
And so I looked it up, and it's like 50,000 years. So from now, 50,000 years.
So there would be no black or white. It'd be all like light brown.
Yeah,
we might have different colors, maybe different like hair texture,
but then I thought about it, and I was like, okay, now there's no actual like races, but they're now this one group of people. Now some are a little bit lighter, some are a little bit darker, some are shorter, some are taller, some are still going to be poor, some are still going to be rich, and I'm like, it's never going to change.
It's never going to change.
You know?
I mean, we've seen that in the black community, because of like issues like passing for white, which gave people advantages, but also became like a cultural phenomenon. I mean, people, just a couple of generations ago, like people in my community, family, they would do things like, you got good skin color if your skin color was close to a paper bag's color. And I'm like, dang, like we still
paper bags, like what?
Yeah,
color?
like a paper bag, like a paper bag, like a
paper bag.
Yeah, paper bag.
Oh yeah.
So it's brown. So it's light brown. So if you're the
I
closer
never heard
you
that
were,
before.
the closer you were to that skin color, the better you were. And what drove that was because, again, the more white you were, the less likely you were going to be mistreated because of your skin color. That was the idea in people's brains.
Or held back.
Yeah. And so colorism became a thing among African Americans, like, and both in a positive and a negative sense, because on one hand, it was like the lighter you are, the better. But then you also got it also meant like, it was negative. There was a negative connotation to that too, because it was like, because you resent people that have advantages. So light-skinned people got picked on because they were light-skinned, although they may have been pushed to feel like they were superior because of the lightness of their skin. And people did take advantage. I mean, there's a reality that light-skinned black people did take advantage of the idea that people might think that they're white, and therefore they wouldn't have to go through what they knew that, other people were going through. In a generational sense, there are a lot of people in this country, especially, who we think are white because their whole background that's been presented is that they're white and they're successful. And then you look, and if you looked at their history, you're like, ooh, they actually, there's somebody in there that was black. I posted something earlier today about Pope Leo. Pope Leo, first American Pope. Grandparents were Creole, right from Louisiana. Became free, so they lived in Louisiana. Were in the census as black people, but they moved to Chicago during the Great Migration I talked about earlier. And in Chicago, and they were light skinned because they're Creole. So Creoles have this mixture, and they look, and some of them have straight hair.
And there's a lot of other groups in Chicago, like Italians.
Yeah. So they went to Chicago.
Probably a lot of Arabs.
Yeah. And when the census came around one year for them, they didn't put down that they were black. They put down they were white. And the family's been white ever since. And as a result, Leo was born with some advantages that, and maybe not directly as a result, but from that, Leo popped out and, went to the church and went to seminary school and, moved up in the upper echelons of the church. And when you saw him, it was like, oh, wow, he's great. He's Chicago. But then, other people were like, when they started looking at his background, they were like, dude,
we're black people like,
he ain't just from Chicago.
Did black people know better?
Yeah.
They look at him and they're like,
yeah, no, I don't think so. No.
Huh.
No. And that's because, again, that history wasn't out. He doesn't look anything. He doesn't look Creole.
I don't know what he looks like.
Yeah. He looks like a typical white. He almost looks Irish. And the dude is more Italian. If we're talking about any European, then he's more Italian than anything.
Yeah.
On the European side, because he does have his maternal grandparents were Creole, but his paternal grandparents were from Italy and France.
Okay.
Or Sicily though, because his grandfather does look like he's got some color in him. But the idea is like yeah, you can pass, right? And because these issues were issues in our community, so the colorism became a thing, right? So even amongst people who were sequestered and segregated based on their color, dealt with issues of separation that ultimately, ironically led back to color. But it would have been something else. You could look in Africa and Rwanda, where the Hutus and the Tutsis were ethnically the same people.
Right.
Ethnically, I mean, not even just ethnically, DNA wise, were the same people, maybe one generation removed from each other, like cousins. And because of a tribal delineation that came from Europe, these people were killing each other.
Yeah.
Weren't
the French using the lighter skin group? They would give them jobs, and they would have
it wasn't even based on skin color. Not in Rwanda. It was straight based on the Hutus and the Tutsis. The actual name for these two tribes was made up. At one point there was no such thing. They were all one people, but they were split politically.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, they were split politically because Rwanda was always trying to throw off the colonialism from Europe.
So it wasn't about how they had resentment for the one group had resentment for the other group because one had lighter skin than the other and was getting all the jobs.
Nope.
That's the way they thought they kind of sold that in that movie.
Yeah, if I watched like Hotel Rwanda, so I didn't see as much as where the actual origin of the Tutsis versus the Hutus, but the Tutsis and Hutus were ethnically one people.
Sure,
skin color the same. Their language was the same. A Hutu spoke the same tribal language as a Tutsi. The actual tribal delineation came from Belgium. And it was the Belgium government because Belgium and France were the two governments that sort of actually created Rwanda even as a country, because it wasn't even a country. But as they were dealing with this impending fight for independence, there was all this scramble for how do we maintain economic control. And one of the ways was you took this tribe and you just delineated them. There wasn't even a geographic difference until they actually drew a line that actually, when they were drawing the line for what Rwanda even looked like. And they drew these lines and said, well, this tribe lives over in this part and this tribe lives over in this part. And so now we're going to give them a tribal title name that was different. And then after that became government issues. Like, well, now based on what we put in place, we'll give these people some advantages that we won't give them economically. And
I thought there was some of that in there.
Yeah, it was economics and politics, but the real difference, none.
Yeah.
Nothing whatsoever. And you're talking about now a group of black people who are fighting each other over these issues, these differences that they are the same, but somehow they were able to use these differences that are straight artificial.
Yeah, just made up.
We would all do that. Because again, we have these human propensities to gravitate towards each other because you look the same as me, we might eat the same food, so now we're going to gravitate toward each other. But if somebody comes and says, well, let's put some further barriers to keep them together, then we'll be amongst each other, but we'll find something else. It'll be height.
In 50,000 years.
Yeah. Well, it'll be height or something. You know what I'm saying?
In 50,000 years, when we're all the same race, it's still going to be bullshit.
It's going to be something. And then don't let biology come into play, right? It'll be, okay, 50,000 years, we're all the same skin color. Let's say we're all the same height, but at some point, somebody's going to be allergic to peanuts and somebody else is not. And so the ones that are not allergic to peanuts are going to look at the people that can eat peanut butter and resent them. And then there's going to be a peanut butter war. And then all of a sudden, it'll be,
we're so dumb, man.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
We're so dumb.
Yeah.
Man. Well, great conversation.
Likewise,
I really enjoy learning from other people. And I really felt like I learned a lot from you today, and I really appreciated what you said, man.
Word. Well, I appreciate the invite, man. It's an indulgence. Man, I talk too much anyways. So I'm hard pressed to turn down an invite to talk. But I absolutely, do appreciate the invite and the platform. So I hope, people do find some benefit in our discussions and continue, because I see you guys got a lot of people that check out your podcast. And so I imagine that people are able to get something out of it.